And good evening. Welcome back to Hispanic Speak Out TV. I'm Glenda Chauncey, and we're here with Glenda and the Law. And this evening we are featuring bankruptcy attorneys. We have attorney Megan Lyons and Jason Ruggiero. Did I get it right?
Yes, you did.
Yay, I got it right. We're going to be speaking a little bit this evening about bankruptcy and some questions that a lot of viewers may have when it comes to filing a bankruptcy. And the first question, I'm sure a lot of people may come to you and then ask, does filing bankruptcy protect people from litigation?
Yes, it does. If there's a lawsuit that's already in progress or something that's pending, once the bankruptcy is filed, there'll be something called an automatic stay that's in effect, which will essentially stall any of the litigation from continuing further.
So when you're speaking of litigation, let's be a little clear on that, because I think I may know where this is going. Are we talking about foreclosure defense? Is that type of litigation?
Foreclosures or any other creditor type lawsuits typically would be included in that. So if a credit card, a creditor had filed suit or is about to file suit, that would be, you know, one of the ones I'm talking about, or foreclosure certainly, really any type of lawsuit. Except for something criminal or family, that wouldn't be included.
Okay, very good. And under what circumstances would a person even consider a bankruptcy?
Typically when they're, you know, they have zero disposable income or very little disposable income. Instances where debt cannot be, they simply can't become current on their debt due to loss of employment, loss of income. Being behind on mortgages. People will do a Chapter 13 to catch up on the arrearages. Basically a situation where it's the only solution for them to have a fresh start and get back on their feet.
A lot of people file bankruptcy also if they have medical debt. You know, a lot of people don't have insurance, and the medical debt piles up, and bankruptcy will also help, you know, relieve them of the medical debt and get over that.
Well, even if they don't have insurance, I mean, sometimes just the percentage of what they have to pay, if they go into a major medical situation and they have a lot of debt that's piled up just for the co-pays.
Correct.
Does that also apply in a situation like that as well?
If it's their medical debt, yes. Yeah, if they have, you know, we've run into situations where it's a mother that has adult children that are under her name, and then that debt, the adult children cannot be discharged if the debt is, if the account is under her name. In that instance, the adult children may still be liable for the debt, but the mother can discharge her debt if it's the mother that's filing bankruptcy.
Right, right. So it can get pretty complicated at some point with bankruptcy, and as far as the laws, Chapter 7, Chapter 13,
right.
There's a lot of different ways for people to file. If someone is in a foreclosure situation, and because that obviously is something that's happening a lot today in our community. And they're looking at a Chapter 11 versus a 13 or a 7 or whatever that is. Chapter 13 versus a 7, what would you kind of define the difference between those two?
I mean, it's basically going to be income, number one, and it's a fine line, because for Chapter 13, that's going to be for people who make over the median amount, but they can't make too much, because there's limits to that as well. Because with Chapter 7, it's going to be a liquidation of your assets to pay off the creditors, whereas 13, you're primarily going to keep all of your assets.
Okay, so when you have someone come in, you do a consultation, is that kind of the process that you do?
Right.
And you sit down with them, you kind of go through
paperwork with, you know, their income situation, what assets they have, and what would be protected and what would not be protected.
Now, what if a spouse, for an example, a spouse, they're married together, you know, maybe that debt is more leaning on one than the other. How does that work when there's a spouse involved?
Well, you can file your bankruptcy individually or with your spouse. If you come in, if you're married and you file your bankruptcy individually and your spouse is a co-signer on your debt, the debtor, the person that files, for example, would be, you know, the husband. The husband's obligation will be relieved, but the wife is still going to be liable based on whatever she co-signed, unless they file a joint bankruptcy. So the bankruptcy will protect the debtor, which would be the person filing, but it will not relieve the other person. And that's a question that a lot of people have. You know, if I come in and file a bankruptcy, what is my wife or what's my spouse's burden? Well, the spouse, if they're a co-signer, if they're liable on that debt, they are liable on that debt still, even after the bankruptcy is discharged, if they haven't. If they're not in part of the bankruptcy as well.
Very good. Well, my experience in working in the law as well, one thing I always know people have concern about is transportation or cars. because when they know they're going to go in and file for a bankruptcy, do they get to keep their car is always probably the number one question, because they have to get to work, they got to get their kids to school, that kind of thing. So what is the best way to explain to people about a car situation, if that's part of their debt or if it's paid off, that type of thing?
Well, there's a couple things they can do. If they come in and they want to keep their car, then they can do something called reaffirm the debt, which is the simple way to put it is asking the trustee through the court to allow that lender to allow them to keep that obligation. We tell everybody to remain current on that debt if they want to keep that, and then oftentimes they're allowed to keep it because the lender wants the money, not the property.
Right.
So they can reaffirm the debt, or if they're, if they can't meet that obligation, if they purchase something that's beyond their means, then they can just let it go and go discharge that through the bankruptcy as well. But if they do not discharge it, their liability continues.
Correct. And of course, a lot of people are in debt with credit cards, obviously. I think we're kind of brainwashed a little bit to go out, buy on credit, buy on credit, buy on credit. And again, depending on 13 or I believe in a Chapter 7, credit cards are affected how? How would that be handled?
I mean, they're always going to be discharged. The only instance, sometimes there could be a situation where a creditor may dispute something, if there's a presumption of fraud or abuse or something like that. If there were a lot of purchases, specifically luxury items, in contemplation of the bankruptcy, that may be presumptively fraudulent. So there could be more of an investigation there and dispute with the creditors, but I mean, 90% of the time, all credit cards will be discharged.
Right. And one of the questions I have, because
and that's in Chapter 7.
Right. Okay. One of the questions I also have with employment, because we all know when you're going to file for a new job, and they kind of look at your credit and they see that these things have been filed, and sometimes I guess the employers can hold this against you in a sense of getting a position. Are you guys familiar, or do you see that happen a lot in your profession?
Well, a lot of people that come in are concerned with it, but I think that's more of a situational basis where it depends on each person, and I think also your credit depends on the type of job that you're in. But the way that I try to explain it to everybody, and again, it depends on the employer and their view on the bankruptcy and their credit, is, if I was an employer and I was reviewing somebody's credit, and again, this isn't, legal, it's more common sense, or what
right.
what I would do if I was reviewing somebody's credit and I saw that on their bankruptcy on their credit report they had a bankruptcy, I would look at them more favorably because they've taken steps to actually repair their credit, as opposed to somebody that just lets that liability fall and kind of ignores the situation and lets it compound to what it is, where there's lots of judgments and collections and charge-offs and that type of thing, because there is still that liability on there, where a bankruptcy will begin to repair their credit. It'll wipe off that previous debt and give them a chance to start fresh.
And that's probably a nice little lead-in question to ask, is when someone does file a bankruptcy, how soon can they start to repair themselves again, get themselves back on track?
I mean, the process is pretty instantaneous. Most people begin receiving credit card applications maybe a month after discharge, so it begins to repair itself quickly. We have several clients that once the filing took place, their credit went up from prior. So it's obviously a good thing. So it's a pretty quick process. It will remain on your credit for 10 years. But again, I mean, it's going to start to repair instantaneously, very quickly.
And probably gives people a lot of relief, I'm assuming, when they go through this and they kind of get that off their shoulders and the creditor's calling them. I'm sure that kind of stops that pressure, because I know that continues if they don't hire a bankruptcy attorney and get on track with these creditors. So, well, Megan and Jason, just let the viewers know where they can find you, where you're at, email address, website, whatever it is you'd like to give them.
Our website is www.fiercerepresentation.com, and our phone number is 407-476-3437, and our email addresses are mlyons@fiercerepresentation.com and jruggiero@fiercerepresentation.com.
The fiercerepresentation.com. Who came up with that name?
No, Megan did it.
Yeah, that's
great. You can
great.
send it to info@ too, and either one of us will get it.
Yeah, awesome. And you're located where? Where are you located at?
We're currently Well,
We're on South Orange Ave, but we are moving very soon.
yeah,
so.
we're looking at new office spaces right now. We're expanding. So
You're expanding? Well, that's good. That's good. Now, how many do you actually have in your practice at this point? Or in
it's
your
just
firm?
the
Just
two
the
of
two of
us.
us.
Two of you? Okay. You have intake people that work with you, or just?
We have interns that assist us with research and things like that, but that's actually one of the things that we think is sort of unique with us is we don't have anybody other than attorneys that the clients are going to talk to, and we try really hard to keep in contact with them, establish a rapport.
Okay.
Yeah, we always try. I mean, unless we're doing something where we can't, we always try to answer the phone and be available. At any hour, which sometimes is ridiculous.
You give out personal cell
24/7.
numbers, you're in trouble.
Yeah, we're all, we always say, it's just the two of us. You're always going to deal with an attorney. We're always going to try to be there for you.
Well, listen, I think that's really important for someone who is also in the same type of work is knowing that these people can reach out to someone. You're not so big that, they don't feel like you care about them or their best
It's a very
interest.
personal touch
Yeah.
that we try to achieve.
But it can be overwhelming. It can be
We just
overwhelming.
it is overwhelming. I mean, bankruptcy is something that it doesn't really have the negative connotation that it used to have, and it is a fresh start for a lot of people that are in a situation that they didn't ask to be in. So we try to be there for them, and we try to be as compassionate and as helpful as we can. So
Yeah, I mean, it's very question driven and intensive, and oftentimes people have that moral sort of obstacle with it. So it's just a matter of explaining that it's not shameful or that there's no real negative association to it now, and that stigma has somewhat been dissipated over time. I think.
Well, there's a lot. I don't even know what statistics are right now, but I know it's very high that not only in foreclosures, but you have a lot of the numbers going up in filing bankruptcies and things. Because obviously
Well, it's related to the foreclosure crisis too so much, and that people just can't dig themselves out of it. It would be a 30-year, even more, sort of cycle of trying to just dig through and.
Well, my goodness, I mean, the average Floridian across the state is an average of $70,000 upside down in
Exactly.
value. So, I mean, well, it's
pretty
been
tough to recover from.
It absolutely is, and I think it's going to be a long time before we actually see a recovery. So, you're probably in the right business right now.
we've seen bankruptcies too. I mean, the ages have run the gamut. I mean, they come in, college kids are coming
20
in
years
because
old.
credit cards are just, getting out of control at college.
Well, and I'm sure student loans don't qualify either, correct?
Yeah, I was going to mention that too. That's it's a very, very slim exception because a lot of people call for that, and it's it's a very difficult exception to achieve. It's basically you basically have to be unable to ever pay the loans back. So some sort of disability or medical situation that would be a hardship that's basically unable to be overcome.
Correct.
So we would never give our clients the expectation that anything would be discharged, but perhaps if some of their other debt can be,
Yeah.
such as the credit cards or something like that, then they can sort of work things better to at least, pay the student loans, because otherwise they will, get judgments and garnish their wages and things like that.
Right, in which a lot of younger generation doesn't know that either. They don't know that they actually can come after you.
Yeah, and they will too.
Yeah, absolutely.
They
And
usually won't work with people too much on payments. A lot of the government ones are better, but the private lenders are oftentimes not really willing to work out agreements with people.
Correct. Well, again, you guys, thank you for being with us this evening and with me in the law. And again, can you guys just give your information? The website is?
www.fiercerepresentation.com.
Okay, and a phone-
FIERCEREPRESENTATION.
long word. And a good number, just one number where they can contact you.
407-476-3437.
Very good. Thank you very much, and thank you for joining us at Bright House Hispanic Speak Out TV. This is Glenda in the Law. It's been a great interview tonight with you guys. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you very much.